How much of a difference would it really make if employment applications could no longer contain a question about your criminal past? We'll talk about the local Ban the Box efforts and meet a young Durham native who's helping to bring previously unheard voices to the political forefront in our Profiles in Courage, next on Black Issues Forum.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC TV.
I'm Deborah Holt-Noel. If you've ever applied for a job, you're probably familiar with the question on the application that asks if you've ever been convicted of a crime. Now, 16 states and over 100 cities have said this is an unfair question for the millions of people who have some kind of criminal record. In North Carolina, the number is about 1.6 million, and nearly 45% of individuals under Department of Corrections supervision are African American. There are ongoing efforts at city and state levels to ban the box, and today's guests are here to address some of the questions around how this move can help and where the risks lie. I'd like to introduce Representative Garland Pierce of District 48 in the North Carolina House of Representatives, Umar Muhammad, a community organizer with the Southern Coalition for Social Justice and head of the local group All of Us or None, and Daniel Bowes, an attorney and public policy advocate with the North Carolina Justice Center's Second Chance Initiative. Thanks so much to all three of you for coming out.
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you, and I need for you to give me your thoughts on this in the comments. I honestly think that this is a good idea, and let me tell you why. If you paid your debt to society, why is it anyone's business whether you have went to jail or not? Now, hold on. The only reason, the only reason why I think you need to give that information over is either you robbed a bank or if you were doing things with kids. But other than that, no, you shouldn't have to divulge your past if you paid your debt to society. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments, whether you pro or against it.
Thank you. To talk about this important issue. Representative Pierce, I want to open with you. There is some legislation that is out to help address the Ban the Box issue. Can you share a little bit about that?
We had an opportunity to file that bill in the General Assembly, House Bill 612. We had pretty good support from a particular, I would say some bipartisan support on the bill to see if we could get that to move, but we were unable to get it out of a committee. Everything starts in a committee, and we was able to get that bill heard in a committee to move it forward. We think we've had an opportunity to get it heard in the committee. We'd have a lot of time for a lot of my friends here today would have a chance to come and talk about it, but we're just unable to move for different reasons. So we don't know all the reasons, but we just could not move that bill out of committee.
What does the bill propose?
That, like you said, banning the box, excuse me, and that would give, particularly on the state level, that's what we were really shooting for on the state level, that for state jobs, that ban the box would not be on there. And I don't use the term felons, excuse me, I use the word people with unfavorable backgrounds. I think that sounds a whole lot better. A lot of times we already put emphasis on a person's record by calling them felons, but I think the proper terminology would be people with unfavorable backgrounds, going forward in that process. But I think that that's what it would do, and I know my colleague here helped me on a little bit, but it was more to let the state, first of all, get the state to buy in. If the state buys in, that would help going forward with other businesses in the state. If the state would do, and the state, you got to think about it now. The state really hires people who have unfavorable backgrounds in jobs. In some jobs, they work in the governor's mansion, so they work in places that you'd be surprised that they work if you just do a survey on that. There are some jobs where they are working now.
And actually, this question does not appear on applications for all cities. Umar, tell us a little bit about some of the cities that you're aware of that have gone ahead and made that move and what you're doing here in Durham.
Well, Durham, in 2011, Durham has banned the box. And I believe that the research shows that employment for the city of Durham went up significantly while there was 0% incidents, which means we were not hiring criminals, we were not hiring monsters or any stigma that you would place, right? We was hiring people who have made mistakes and are trying to thrive in life.
Why do you care about the issue?
I'm a person with an unfavorable background. Um, I'm a formerly incarcerated person who has suffered the collateral consequences of having a criminal background. I'm born and raised in Durham. And coming home, most people are released and they go back home to usually where they left and caught their charge from. I have that story. My community has that story of people not being able to get jobs, not being able to have employment, not being able to qualify for housing because of a mistake.
Now, this ban the box legislation that's being proposed only applies to certain kinds of jobs, as the representative said, state jobs, but more clearly, that's just the public sector.
Exactly.
Does
Even though earlier in the video I asked you for your opinion on the topic, I want you to reach out to your friends and family members or friends of family members and that have done time and see what they say about that. Would it make it easier? Can they see some pros and some cons in the situation? And yeah, basically, I just want to get a basic understanding from them.
it apply to housing applications or anything else?
No, it applies to public employment. And the big thing here is that it's not saying that a criminal record doesn't matter. It says that it shouldn't be the only thing that matters because there are so many people with a criminal record. 1 in 5 adults in North Carolina has a criminal record. And as Umar said, the common experience of these individuals is no matter how long it's been or what they've done with their lives since they got that criminal record, they're being defined by it and not given jobs and not giving housing. So what this legislation would do is say that you get a sense of who that person is. You can't just exclude them at the door and define them as a criminal. You have to go through the process, look at their skills, look at if they're the most suitable person for that job, and if you decide they are, only at that time do you take into account their criminal record. And then it also specifies specifically how you consider that criminal record. How long ago did the conviction occur? What was the seriousness of it? What's the connection between that criminal record and their ability to do the job? And at that point, you make a decision whether this individual who you've identified as the most suitable for the position is still the most suitable considering they have this criminal record. And we think that by doing this, again, this is only for public employment, that the state is going to get better employees because they're not just excluding people based on a very superficial view of their criminal record, that they're doing an individualized assessment of who that person is and deciding that they're the best person for that position. And again, we think that what we've seen around the country is that if the state does it and it works as it has, then private employers can say, hey, I can get the best person by conducting a more individualized review. And it really helps both the individual and the employer.
So how does this make it possible to get a better employee?
Because you're not automatically saying at the very front, hey, if you have a felony conviction, you're not getting in. Or a lot of times it goes far beyond that. And we see people being denied based on misdemeanor convictions or dismissed charges even. And so instead of just really what I would say throwing out the baby with the bathwater and excluding everybody, you're letting them through the door.
And sometimes, like this young man, if he can just tell the story, why it happened, you know, I was a teenager. It's all kind of stories that you can tell. And most people can realize that people need a second chance. And also, they realize it could have been me. I could have been in the same situation. Sometimes people just in the wrong place, wrong time. I mean, that's just my opinion about it. So I think we just need to give people a chance. And I think banning the box will give people a chance to, most of all, just to tell their story, why I'm in this situation. I think, yes, ma'am.
And based on research, though, what has been happening to these folks, and then there's going to be even more of them as people are released from prisons because of decriminalization of certain kinds of past records. Umar, what traditionally happens to this community of people who have been touched by the criminal justice system and they come out and they're looking for that opportunity, they go apply, and well, statistically speaking, they stand a 1 in 12 chance of being denied the opportunity to work?
Well, 50% of North Carolina employers say that they are unwilling to hire someone with a criminal background. That says a lot, right? When recidivism is so high that they say that you can only stay out 2 years, and if you do not find a job within 2 years, you'll be back behind the wall. my story made a shift because I was not aware of collateral consequences. There was no prep for when I was getting ready to come home for prison to say, get ready because you will not be able to find a job. Get ready because you will not be able to find housing. So a lot of people come home with hopes of saying, hey, I will take anything that I can, I will go anywhere I can work. If it has to be me flipping burgers, if I'm on top of a roof, I just do not want to come back here again. And we're getting out and we're not able to have these opportunities. And banning the box will allow us to be seen as humans before anything.
Thank you.
And I think that, legislators, the Representative Pierce is a leader on this issue, but it really is a bipartisan issue. Legislators are starting to understand across the country, but also in North Carolina, that it makes sense to restore opportunities for productive citizenship, to allow people to work, because they want to work. They want to have safe housing for their kids. And if you isolate them so completely from opportunity, you really facilitate a revolving door criminal justice system. And that's not good for anybody. It makes communities less safe, it's expensive, and it just doesn't make sense. So that it actually is on the front end, by restoring these opportunities, you're actually not only doing the right thing, you're doing the safe thing, and also doing the thing that's best for our economy.
The safe thing, because these individuals otherwise would either possibly end up back in the criminal justice system or be living in poverty.
Exactly. So having a job is the biggest indicator of success when somebody is released from prison, and so that is a very important issue. And it just, I think that just makes sense to people, that if you allow them to be contributing members of society, that they're invested and they are able to prosper and provide for their family.
Well, it's said to be. I'm sorry.
I think argument one time where people, when jobs were scarce, that the people were afraid that people who have no problems, who've had no criminal record, can't get jobs, and then you have people who. So you had a problem, and that was an argument one time that people was discussing. The person has no criminal record, they can't get a job, and you got a person with a criminal record getting a job. So it was, society is strange sometimes how we think about things. But going back to that, the amount of money it takes to keep an inmate behind prison walls is very expensive. I think the corrections officers, they say about $35,000 a year. If you think about that in terms, we as taxpayers, either we're going to pay it on the front end, the back end, or somewhere, but we're still investing in people with unfavorable backgrounds. So it's more productive for society and for that person to be out and being a contributor, tax base, raising their families. And you said something about a little bit about poverty. Well, if the gentleman is not able to really do what he needs to do, other lady, there's a lot of ladies also, you're not able to provide for your family, and that creates a poverty situation that then society has to step in and take. So it's, when you look at it, I think we're better off trying to help young men and young women get jobs when they come out of the penal system. And that's where Ban the Box would really help. Because a lot of them would get that opportunity if they're provided a chance just to get in front of somebody who's hired. I really believe that, because they're very skillful people, very knowledgeable, and able to do great work. I know.
I don't know for sure if this is true, but I remember reading an article a couple years ago that said if prisoners aren't able to come home for whatever reason, and enlisted work as well, that they are forced to stay in prison to be free labor. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
That, without a shadow of a doubt.
Now, it's said to be a bipartisan issue, and yet there's obviously resistance out there. One of the communities that is resistant, it sounds like, is small business owners who are concerned that this has previously been a way to help perhaps avoid doing background checks and the cost of going through that process.
And it is a concern, and understandably, because profit margins are not high. And at the end of the day, it's about running a business and doing it well. But again, we think that based on the example that we see around the country, that you can actually get a better employee by adopting these policies. Now, as the representative said, this specific bill would only apply to public employment and allow the state to sort of be the leader on this. But there are also private employers around the country that are leading on this issue. Target banned the box, Coke Industries, which is a very conservative group banned the box. And it truly is sort of a bipartisan issue. And even at the state legislature, they've taken up this issue for the last couple of years now. So now we're talking about employment with the state, but a couple years ago, they actually made significant changes to the occupational licensing laws, because 1/3 of jobs in North Carolina require some sort of certification or licensing to practice those professions. And they said, and what they saw was that people were being automatically excluded based on their criminal records by these occupational licensing boards. And they said, you can't do that. You can't automatically exclude somebody based on their criminal record. You need to actually consider what their specific criminal record was, and it looks at the same factors that Representative Pierce's bill does. And so there is it truly is a bipartisan issue. It makes sense to do this. The governor of Georgia just banned the box in an executive order, and that's a person who nobody would dispute is a very conservative person, but it just makes fiscal sense and it's really the right thing to do.
And go ahead.
If I may, as far as small businesses go, it would make more sense to ban the box. We're not asking to not do the criminal background check, right? So this would save you, if you have 300 applicants, this would save you from doing 300 criminal background checks. If you only interviewed 100 people, you will only be getting 100 background checks. So it would be cheaper on the small business as well.
And as far as background checks, is there more that people need to know, small business owners may need to know about the civil rights aspect of not having either background checks or of instituting stricter or even discriminatory background checks, even if you don't document exactly what you're doing?
So Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 does provide protections from discrimination for certain protected classes of individuals. And one of those classes is African Americans. One of those classes is not people with criminal records, but the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has sort of stretched that law because individual African Americans are, as you cited at the beginning of the program, disproportionately affected by this issue. They're more likely to have a criminal record. So if an employer has these automatic disqualifications based on dismissed charges or long ago convictions, then that makes them potentially liable for violating Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, because even though it's theoretically a neutral policy, in practice it disparately impacts African American applicants. And so that business needs to show that there's some necessity to do that, because if they couldn't do that, then they couldn't get the right employees. And in the experience of many employers and around the country, there just isn't a reason to automatically exclude people based on a criminal record. And so that's why these these policies, whether it's ban the box or other policies, that give a chance to do an individual review of that individual just makes sense. And they're the right thing to do, but they also protect people against Title VII liability.
And I've also heard the argument, well, why focus energies around ban the box when the real issue is over criminalization of bad behavior?
Well, as my great mentor, Darrell Atkinson, reminds me daily, that ban the box is just a piece of the burger of ending mass criminalization and mass incarceration. So us banning the box, getting people to work, getting our people who have been behind the wall, and get these brothers and sisters a job that pays livable wage, so that you don't just have to survive, but you can thrive. Employment opportunities.
Tell me what type of job is needed in the comments to have a livable wage.
Education opportunities, housing opportunities. This is just a bite of the burger. It's much, much work that we all need to collectively do. Ban the box will just be a part of it.
And towards that, this has become a crisis because we live in an electronic age where a criminal record truly is sort of a new age scarlet letter. But even more than that, we do criminalize things that we haven't criminalized in the past. We criminalize common spaces. We criminalize schools. And North Carolina actually has the lowest age of maximum juvenile jurisdiction in the country, so that 16 and 17-year-olds are automatically charged as adults. And so that means, you put an SRO officer in the schools, and that incidents that used to end up in the principal's office and being punished with detention are now being adjudicated in a court, and really weighing down young men and young women, again, 16 and 17-year-olds, with records that will follow them for the rest of their lives and really isolate them from opportunities to be productive adults. And so we should look at those sort of issues, but this is an important piece on the back end that we restore these opportunities.
And you mentioned taking that bite out of the burger, so to speak. Are there other things that you're working on with Southern Coalition?
Definitely. Southern Coalition, we also house a clean slate clinic where we expunge criminal backgrounds for free to help you overcome the barriers of employment, housing, education. We can only do this by the laws of the state of North Carolina, and it's very, very slim. So only 50% of our applicants are eligible to have their records expunged. And as you look deeper, you see that multiple convictions, you're not eligible to have a criminal background expungement. But when you look at the stories of these people, you see that they're from over-criminalized neighborhoods. It was very easy to have a charge at the age of 15, 16 years old because the officer is not in great contact or in communication with that community. So Southern Coalition for Social Justice does wonderful work. Outside of just criminal justice, we do voting rights, voter education, and all of that meshes together as collective work for us to thrive.
Umar, Representative Pierce, Daniel, thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate the work that all of you are doing.
Thank you.
We've already heard from Umar Muhammad as a representative of the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, and also All of Us or None, but there's more to know about his journey to this position and the greater impact that he's now having on the community that he serves. We share with you a little of it now in our Profiles in Courage.
I think that my name is Umar Muhammad. I'm born and raised in Durham. Poor black and brown communities and criminalized communities, over-policed communities are the communities that I'm fighting for. The young people in this community are bright, intelligent, beautiful, young, energetic. At least that's how I see it. I look at the best in my communities. So I see the greatness in it. So I see that you don't have much, but you make the best of everything. All of Us or None is a grassroots initiative. We participate in our clean slate clinics where we expunge criminal backgrounds for free to help people overcome barriers. We do voter education. We also participate with Spirit House in the harm-free zone, and that's, I believe, is our key part. The harm-free zone is a training that we go through so that we can be like the mediators in our community. We can be the first response instead of the officer who does not know you and is going to give you a charge or take you to jail or whatever. All of Us or None needed to be started here because the people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system did not have a strong voice. We needed to unite our voices to talk about what we needed to survive. And it's just good to know that people out here, your peers, who come from places like where you're coming from, are out here supporting you. I think I had my first charge at 15, 16, where it could have easily been taken care of at the principal office. I ended up going to the court. So for my generation, gangbanging was heavy, right? It was heavy. It was in every school, it was in every community. You couldn't avoid it. My mom fought hard to keep me out of situations that I was in. She fought extremely hard. I don't know, man, I guess the system got a heavier hand. So I was still on my 9 months parole. It was a 9 months post-release, and I did not do anything on it. I didn't go to school, I didn't get a job because of the barriers. I had a violent crime, and employers just didn't want to hire me. I also had drug crimes on my record, which prevented me from having financial aid or anything like that. So I had went to Durham Technical Community College twice to try to get into school, and I talked to 2 different people. And one day, my grandmother, whom I do not talk to much, just happened to be talking to me one day, and she called me one day. My grandmother calls me, and she says, Umar, I want you to try to go to school. And I went to the school, and I seen one of my homeboys up there. He had a backpack on, and I know that his criminal record is way longer than mine. So I pulled over. I was driving my mother's car. I didn't even have a car at the time. And he was like, I got somebody for you to come talk to. So he took me into the school. We went to the small office, and in there was Candace Rashada Mujahid.
We talked for about 2 hours because here was someone who wanted to just know what to do.
I was identifying myself as a felon and a convict, and she paused me. She was like, "Stop."
He said I was, an ex-felon, and I was like, well, stop right there. I said I do a lot of reentry work, and the one thing that we do not do is characterize ourselves by our worst mistakes.
You're a person who's been formerly incarcerated. You're a man. You're intelligent.
Let me know in the comments, have you ever been characterized by a bad mistake?
And you're trying to do something better in life. And I think that was my first time really letting that sit in.
In Umar, incredibly resilient, incredibly bright, so charming, and all of those skills are marketable, valuable skills to any employer. And look where he is today.
I didn't do this by myself, right? It really took a community. And I know that we hear beautiful stories all the time about I changed my life over and I did this and did that, but my story is not like that.
I'd like to thank Representative Garland Pierce, Umar Muhammad, and Daniel Bose for coming out. For more information about today's program,
Please tell me your thoughts about this video in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.